let's look in some more detail about developed versus developing countries. There really is a big difference. We look at the huge, massive disparity of income between them in the process. So you look on the per capita gross national income. Per capita means per individual gross national income of $12,056 or more. That is for a developed economy to go through. It really is a high material standard of living, high quality of life index, and has a substantial middle class. There are some traits here you need to pay attention to that are going to be critical. Yes, they're going to be on the test coming up. The other part, though, if you're serious about conducting international business, pay attention, because this is the meat. If you're going to sell a product that can't be paid for by the average citizen of the country, and you enter into that market thinking you're going to make money off of it, you need to sit down and do the analysis and maybe rethink everything, or make certain you do all you can to avoid going to that country, because by the time you're done, it has a high probability of being an abject failure. These standards here are critical to the development and actually selling, marketing, hiring, whatever it takes in that country as you go through. If you're going to use it for a manufacturing base, that is a whole different thing, because you're not selling the product, you're making the product as you go through. The developed countries, frequent application of the most advanced production techniques, that has to pay attention in your perspective, even if you're going to sit down and manufacture equipment there, as they have a large base of productive capital and sophisticated financial markets and banking systems. If they don't, you may have a lot of problems as you go through later on. And a very small share of the total output of the country should come from agriculture, with a declining share for manufacturing. All that is part of the aspect of a developed economy as you go through. Second bullet point. This is a big deal. A well-established government and legal system. You know what? I will make fun of our legal system in the United States probably until the day I die, and maybe even after that too in the process. But that being said, okay, we have one of the best legal systems on planet Earth. Okay, that being said, you have Mexico, you have a lot of great people in Mexico. The problem is their legal system struggles to overcome all the different crime in the process out there, and some very good people end up getting assassinated by drug cartels as they're running for office. So the legal system really has major, major challenges. Now their GNI is coming up as a nation, but that being said, until they overcome that legal system issue, it will always have a lot of instability in the process. So even though I'll be happy to make fun of our system, we have some positive things. We have contracts that can bind two parties together, and you can sit down there and enforce the contract as you go through. The next point is plentiful educational opportunities and low illiteracy. That's a big deal. An educated population. Kind of like, oh, wait a minute, you're going to college right now. Yes, smart, okay, in the process. They have low levels of unemployment or underemployment, and they have adequate levels of nutrition and access to healthcare. These are all the traits, these two things. By the time you're all done, you're looking at 9 different traits about a developed economy. This is critical to sit down in your analysis of whether or not you should go into a country and do business. Now, let's look at the traits of a developing country as you go through. The income is less than $12,056, okay? And then you want to look at the material standard of living and the quality of life index. Sometimes you'll have some type of dualism for high productivity incomes in this region and little economic in the other. You may have a patchwork of productivity as you go in. So pay attention to that, because some countries, they'll have a super area over here that's economically pumping on all cylinders, and this one over here that's struggling in a totally agrarian society. So you may have a bifurcation or multiple other types of things in the country where some parts are fabulous and some parts are struggling as you go through. There's a lot of merit to go in a country like that, because you may be able to sit down there and take the prosperity here and expand it by taking advantage of this and raising the standard of living over here while you're making a big profit as you go through. So pay attention to that as well. Technological dualism, spectacular here, poor here. Maybe if your country is selling technology, especially inexpensive technology, you can sit down and have a base here and spread it out over here in the process. Pay attention to this part over here, the dualism thing, as to prosperous and not prosperous in the same countries you go through. Low savings rank, inadequate banking facilities, that can sit down and hurt you, because if it has an unstable banking system, you may have trouble with your own money as you go through. A relatively unproductive agricultural sector that really provides a living for most of the population. If they're all farmers and there's no technology, no manufacturing, you may have a problem. Political instability, sometimes in some of these countries that are just developing, you may be sitting there doing fine, then all of a sudden you have terrorists on your border grabbing your employees, holding for hostage to you, or taking over your facilities, or just nationalizing your own equipment you spent a couple of $1 billion on. Political instability is really dangerous for you to sit down and roll into the country. And the illiteracy rate is also a big issue because of the fact that an uneducated population may not understand what you're doing and only focus in on their own social economic issues and not look at the long term, how you're going to help that country. Disguise unemployment, where two people do a job one person can do as you go through in the process, malnutrition, looking at the whole aspect of it, and the whole inhospitable topography, so deserts, mountains, and tropical forests. Sometimes they almost make doing business there impossible in the process you go through. So look at the emerging market economies where you have a low to middle range in transition towards a developed status. Those really provide an opportunity for an international business to go in and be successful as you go through. Think about the aspect, what impacts do economic forecasts have on the firm's functional area? Pay attention to this question over here, because of the fact when you start thinking about all the different opportunities that are out there, do you have an opportunity to grow in that country? So here are some points I want to sit down there for you to take away from here. You can see the picture to the right. You have on the left-hand side, a developed country, on the right-hand side, a poverty-stricken developing country as you go through. The middle class is a big issue, a solid financial system and a fair legal and government system as you go through. Political stability, much as I like to make fun of our instability and the craziness we have in the United States, is by far superior to anything else almost on planet Earth as you go through. With high literacy rates of population, consistent rising standard of living, and all are factors to your business in this country to begin to thrive or take a dive, your choice. Take care.